Hello, my name is Dr. Dave Webster, and I am an expert in something called positron emission tomography, or PET scanning. Most won't know about PET scanning, but it has been the accepted world standard of management of patients for not just cancer but other critical illnesses for, in some cases, 20 years, and in places like Chile, now even Paraguay. Now, Ms. Horwath has said that if she's elected, she will end whole-way medicine in Ontario. Now, even if that were true, what Ms. Horwath knows is that Ontario physicians would still be forced to practice medicine based on Cancer Care Ontario compulsory standards that were appropriate in the mid to late 1990s. Now, Ms. Horwath is also aware, as is her health critic Ms. Jellinez, that the impact and consequences for our patients can be, and often is, disastrous. In fact, in 2017, the Auditor General report for Ontario said that Ontario citizens have the least number of PET scans per thousand population in the world where PET is offered. If the NDP had made it their agenda to back the Liberals, they would never have been able to achieve this milestone, which I know for a fact the Liberals and Cancer Care Ontario, and presumably Ms. Horwath, are very proud of. Now, the NDP, in fact, know more about these issues than most, since I had numerous meetings with way back when Shelley Martel was health critic, and now, of course, Franz Jellinez, and I provided them with all the critical documents they needed to understand these complex issues. There can be no other conclusion. The NDP did make it their policy to ensure the Liberals' success by being very careful not to answer a single question that would really embarrass the Liberals over all these years. In fact, the Liberals, starting with Dalton McGuinty, instructed Cancer Care Ontario to discredit, delay, and block PET because they simply didn't want to pay for it. Now, Cancer Care Ontario would partner with the McMaster School of Medicine, with some of their colleagues there, to accomplish this mandate. Now, it is of no concern to Ms. Horwath that in 2016, Professor Rodney Hicks, a renowned PET expert from Australia, said, and I quote, "Ontario has the most egregious and politically motivated agenda against PET, a read of our patients, in the world," end of quote. Now, a practical example of the NDP not saying anything is that for years the Liberals have been blocking a plan to supply 7 Ontario communities with local access to PET, so they wouldn't have to travel on bad roads or just too sick to travel. And they would have done this using mobile PET-CT, which in fact is the way 60% of mobile or PET is done in the States. Now, it's not just more convenient and safer for the patients. There's no infrastructure cost to the hospital, and yes, it is actually cheaper to the Ontario taxpayers. So, in spite of Ms. Jellinez in the media being outraged that 30% of the North cancer patients aren't able to or don't want to travel to Toronto, and knowing that every reason that Dr. Hoskins, when he was Minister of Health, offered to block mobile PET for these 7 communities varied from the laughable to outright alternative truths, not a squeak out of the NDP to stand up for Ontario's patients. But the most disturbing example is Ms. Horwath's support for the special efforts of the Liberals to block Ontario women with breast cancer from what may be a critical PET scan. In fact, it was the Cancer Care Ontario experiments on women with breast cancer that led in 2005 to motions from physicians declaring these trials, quotes, unethical, end of quotes. They also demanded that Canadian experts in ethics and health policy, not in science, there was no science, but ethics and health policy to determine how this possibly could have happened in Ontario. The Liberals, with the support of the NDP, have just simply ignored that motion. We remain the only medical jurisdiction on the planet to continue to deny that particular women with breast cancer could have enormous benefit from a PET scan. The only one. And it's based on an experiment that was declared officially and is unethical and, in fact, immoral. So Ms. Horwath is also aware that in 2009, Dr. Aldridge, the most senior member of the PET steering committee that wrote that trial, resigned and said what the government was doing, and I quote, bordered on immoral, end of quotes. Yet again, not a peep of protest on behalf of patients with breast cancer from Ms. Horwath. So, Ms. Horwath, the time has come for you to explain to Ontario patients, and I would suggest particularly to Ontario patients with breast cancer, just why you have made sure that the Liberals successfully took our cancer patients, but not just cancer patients, patients concerned with dementia, head injuries, cardiac issues, and many of the things PET are used for in the rest of the world, to the last place on this planet in the era of 21st century medicine. I've always been confused why the NDP would take that position. Maybe you could clarify that for all of us. Thank you.